Y'all, Stages is now sponsored by BetterHelp, and I couldn't be more excited because I love therapy. So I encourage you, if you've had a tough year and a half, why don't you give them a shot? You can find a therapist that you can connect with. Their resource is thousands of therapists, well-trained and experienced. You can keep looking until you find someone that you click with. They have customized online therapy. They do offer videos, but they also offer phone and live chat sessions. So you don't even have to be seen. You can only be heard. What are you waiting for? Go to BetterHelp. That's HELP.com/stages. And for our cast members, you get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/stages. Go, go, go. Go find your healing. Go find your happy. Stages podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. That's HELP. Hi, I'm Stephanie J. Block.
And I'm Mary Lee Fairbanks. Welcome to Stages Podcast,
where we're bringing creation and connection to center stage. It still says my internet connection is unstable. It still says it's unstable, my love. Maybe it won't. Maybe it won't happen.
Oh, damn it. You're frozen again.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah. You're right. In and out. You're in and
really?
Out for sure.
You didn't hear me say I'm unstable, the internet connection, and that's what I have in common with this effing internet connection. And then we both sound like squeaky dog toys when we laugh.
Welcome, cast members. On today's show, we have one of the nicest writers I have ever worked with. He won the 2010 Tony Award for Memphis. His comedy, I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, is one of the longest running off-Broadway shows. His other works include Drama Desk award-winning Nice Work If You Could Get It, Toxic Avenger, All Shook Up, Ernest Shackleton Loves Me, which I just adored, What's New Pussycat, which has recently finished its run in London, and Diana, based on the life of Princess Diana of Wales, is now streaming on Netflix. He's a founding board member of the philanthropy Only Make Believe, and they have performed for almost 100,000 children in hospitals, care facilities, and special education centers. Please welcome Mr. Joe DiPietro.
Joe DiPietro to stage, please. Joe, can we have you on stage?
Hello.
Hello, Joe. How are you?
Good. I'm good.
It's so good to see you.
So good
Hello,
to see
Joe.
you. Stephanie, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing fine,
Now, let me correct right off the bat. Was it Tony's plural for Memphis?
Yeah, it was two.
Two. You don't want to separate siblings.
No,
you know what I mean?
It was a fun, I'll say it was a fun night.
I bet. I want to jump in with I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, because anytime I see that there are over 5,000 performances of a show, there are very few shows that can tout that. I mean, very, very few, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's the second longest running off-Broadway show after the Fantastics.
Holy crap.
Yeah, millions.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Seb told me it was one of his, Sebastian, my husband, told me it was one of his very first professional experiences. He played man number 2. He was thrilled. And the way they got him was the wording of, we will pay you $1,000 over the span of 10 weeks. And he got hooked up. And then finally he sat and he was like, wait a second. That's only $100 a week. What am I doing? Not a mathematician, my husband.
No, but
he hears $1,000 and he's like, I'm a paid actor to do the most fun role. Yeah. So he said yes.
I had a blast doing that show. And the people that were in it, I mean, you just had the greatest cast members in and out. And I'm still friends with tons of them. I just loved it. Loved it.
You know,
it's
fun. Like, you know, it's funny because when I was not a kid, but a much younger man when I wrote that. And you know, that was like sketches about dating that I wrote about me and my friends. And you think, oh, a few people will like this. And suddenly you put it up and it runs, and it really started my career. And you meet remarkable, the one thing about shows, which a lot of people don't know about, is when you do a show, you generally meet great people who you remain friends with for many, many years. And you see them in various guises in and out of the business and stuff. So it really, it was a great group. It was a great, we had this super talented people throughout. We really always got good people. And it's also amazes when I, see auditions for shows and I see someone's done I Love You, You're Perfect, all over the place. And I'm like, oh yeah, I totally can see them in this because they can really sing and they're really funny.
If you were going to remount it now,
what
changes would you make as an author to kind of reflect what has happened?
We did a revival of it with changes at George Street Playhouse like 2 years ago, sort of a year before the pandemic. So there's a new version. Some of the things that, it was 1996, so a lot has changed. One of the big things that have changed is how we use technology to interact with people. So there was a sketch about someone looking in their diary, like suddenly now it's like, what are you looking at when, how you blind date someone, you Google someone. Groups over the years have made some of those couples, which were all heterosexual couples in the off-Broadway version, have just naturally made them, gay couples and lesbian couples. Right. But we actually added some, or we rewrote some things so that's what they are. So for everyone to do. And also that we added a song that I literally can't believe how great a reaction it gets, which is about guys sending crotch pics to women, which I didn't know guys did. I didn't know straight guys did. I'm a gay guy. I'm like, this is what gay guys do. And when my female friends were telling me, I met this guy and he sent me, I'm like, really? So we actually have a song called A Picture of His Penis that I thought, well, this is too crude. People go crazy for it. Yeah. That's how we've progressed.
And how many languages has it been done in? I mean, it's done everywhere all over the world.
Bunch. Yeah, no, it's great. It's China. There was a movie of it in Hong Kong, like a big splashy, like, all those numbers, one number is 2 people playing tennis and suddenly there's like 1,000 people with tennis rackets dancing. Yeah, it's, amazing. Yeah, you can't, it was literally like, you never know what's going to hit. I mean, as anyone in this business knows, you think you're doing something, important or that's really going to reverberate and it doesn't. And then you do a show with 4 people about, trying to connect with someone in life and it suddenly goes on and on.
But like you said, writing that was personal. They were personal stories. So all of a sudden that personal becomes so universal because of the specificity with which you were writing. It's kind of amazing, really amazing.
I think writing is all about specificity. Specific becomes the universal. The gift I've gotten from writing and being creative is that I've learned we're all the same inside. Like we're born with different bodies and ethnicities and sexual preferences and religions, whatever. But inside, we all want the same things out of life. We all want to be happy. We all want to love someone. We all want to be seen. You want to be seen. You want to be heard. You want to have a purpose. We all want those same things. And so when you can, as a writer, when you can imbue that with your characters, everything else is literally the external. But it's really, I feel what I love about theater is I feel it connects us all as humans when it's done well, even if it's something as frivolous as, a musical comedy about dating and romance.
That's what theater is. That's the whole point. It's like to bring us to that space where we're all one and we share one heartbeat and one understanding of humanity. That
explains it all. That was why I think theater, even in these pandemic times, will always exist. And, theater's been, people have been saying it's dying for the last 2,000 years, but it's unique. And when it works, it works better than any creative entertainment form, I think.
So you're an original Jersey boys. My daughter was born in Jersey as well. And I think Jersey gets a really bad rap. So tell me about being raised in Jersey, great memories, I'm guessing, helping a supportive family.
I came from an Italian-American family and a very middle class. A couple of my grandparents were immigrants, literally, came here when they were 14, alone because there was no work or food for them in Italy.
What part of Italy did they come from? What part?
All over. My grandfather was born in a little town called Introdoc, which is river south of Rome. One was from Sicily, their family. One was from up by Lake Como. And they all met in New Jersey, in Cliffside Park, sort of at like an Italian, yeah, it's not even middle class. It was really a lower class, but no one knew they were lower class. They were all just, my grandfather, one built railroads, one worked in a factory all his life. So it was very sort of, the American immigrant experience. And then their goal was you educate your kids so they can have a better life than you do. So my dad went to college on like the GI Bill and was a terrible student, but became a businessman. And my mom, who was valedictorian of her class, became a housewife because that's what you did in the 1950s, and she raised kids. And then she went back to school later on and actually became a really wonderful artist. Actually, she's a great painter, watercolors. But it was very much raising in a very sort of conservative, but very loving family. And one thing was always to culture the kids. Like the big thing was you expose your kids to as much as you can. So I grew up in Jersey, 20 minutes from New York City, and my dad worked there. So when I was growing up in the 1970s, he always took us to see shows, the big shows of the 70s, like that were suitable for children. So like Annie and Shenandoah and The Wiz. And the first show they took me to see was 1776. And I remember the lights came up on the Continental Congress and I was hooked. I was like, I can still remember that moment where I was sitting, I was in the mezzanine on the left and the lights came up and it was the original cast I have from the playbill. And I was like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how I can be a part of this, but I have to be a part of this. I started going on my own when I was older, but it's a great lesson in really exposing your kids to as much as you can, because who knew? Yeah.
Were you an avid reader and writer up to that point? Like your mama as valedictorian, did she instill those sort of qualities?
I always loved reading, and I always had a journal. I wrote poetry and short stories. But I also was very hooked on old movies for some reason. I don't know why when I was a kid, like,
me too.
Black and white. Like
me too. Gates.
Yeah, same.
Who knows? Some of those movies are so well written and I just like loved them.
I had the biggest crush on Jimmy Stewart. My mother said, I walked past the TV and if Jimmy Stewart, I would just stop and stare at him and Danny Kaye. Oh, Lord. I love it.
These are good choices, Mary.
Danny Kaye.
These are good choices.
I was madly in love. My mother just thought I was the strangest child.
I know.
Everybody else loved Greg Brady. And I'm like, no, it's Danny Kaye.
I think us theater folks were all like a little odd in certain ways. But I was like,
weird.
I'd be sit home and watch, a Barbara Stanwyck movie and be happy as I am. But I think I sort of like picked up an ear for dialogue from them. And what I also used to do was there was a place in our public library. I grew up in a little town called Oradell in New Jersey.
I know it well.
A place that had New Plains. You know it? Yeah.
I do. You want to know the connection is a little odd, but my dog who just passed away, but he was my life and love. And we would go to Oradell Animal Hospital all the time because it was one of those places that literally had like internists and ophthalmologists and orthopedic surgeons for animals. And so we would be in your town a lot with our little pooch.
Yeah, no, I grew up, 4 minutes from there. So so that's where I grew up. But the library had all these plays that were that you could take out, and there were sort of plays of the 1970s and 60s, which actually seemed very sexy and contemporary, dealing with all sorts of issues that I loved reading. So I would take out classic plays, Arthur Miller, Tennessee Williams, Lillian Hellman, just sort of more modern plays. And, it was a real education that I just did it because I loved it. I would just read these plays and I loved how dialogue flowed off the page. And I had such reverence for playwrights. And they opened up worlds to me that I wasn't getting on television or in the movies or, in the literature that was being assigned at school. So it really, I'm sort of a little self-educated in that way, but I just, loved it. Like no one had to tell me to read these. I just loved reading them.
Do you find yourself eavesdropping all the time in coffee shops and listening to conversations to hear all the time?
I do. And sometimes I have to I'll be with my boyfriend. I'll be zoning out because I'm like listening. No, stay in reality.
Come back. Let's go.
Come back. Yeah. Come back. Yeah.
Right. That's the original reality show, right? Where we're all just kind of watching each other going, oh, they're on a first date. Oh, this is not going well. This is not going well.
How does this work out? I could use that. Yeah.
Yep.
The worst is when it's myself, if I'm having an argument, like, my boyfriend or something, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I could use that. That's interesting. And I'm like,
can you just stop for a second? I want to write that down. So don't
stay in the fight, stay in the real life.
since you are so well acclaimed on both the off-Broadway stage and the Broadway stage, do you feel the pressure is different when you're creating? Yeah, big time pressure. Talk a little bit about that and what that feels like as an author.
And off Broadway, I mean, I've been doing this now for 25 years, and off Broadway's really changed. I mean, when we started with I Love You Perfect Now Change, you could do a little musical off Broadway that's commercial and could run, and no one says, let's move it to Broadway. And, and
it's happy to be it's happy to be an off-Broadway show.
It's saddened me, not only musicals, but also plays. I mean, there was a time where the hit from Playwrights Horizons and from, Lincoln Center would move off Broadway and run for 2 or 3 years. And those plays would make their and then those plays would play all over the country and the world and then make their authors a lot of money. Now the pressure is, if you have an off-Broadway hit, move it to Broadway and expose it to a bigger audience, which works for some shows, but not all of them.
Yeah.
So I feel there's a real pressure to Broadway. It's just the money is, and I always say that when you have a new show on Broadway, during previews in the back of the theater, you meet a new producer every night because someone comes up to you and says, "Hi, Joe, I'm one of your producers."
Right.
And because so many people are putting money into it, because you need millions of dollars, you don't know if they put 10,000 in or
right. And with all due respect, they don't know the difference between saying a producer and an investor, right? And then these are different, right? But they like to immediately come up and say, I'm a producer on the show. And you're like,
they're generally, supportive and nice. And, you
totally.
$5,000 is a lot of money. So you're grateful. A lot of people say, people shouldn't be called producers unless they do this. But I'm like, you know what? We need the money and the enthusiasm. I think they're patrons of the arts. No one really puts money in thinking they're going to make $1 gazillion, because you just never know. So I really appreciate them. But you do meet, but there are a lot of people, and there's just pressure, especially when things, every show always has I always call, no matter, even if a show is a big hit and goes well, there's always a bump somewhere. So you really need to work with people who know how to sort of get over any sort of bumps in the road that you might have. But there's just a lot of pressure. And, I've been around long enough that I just try to focus on the work always, try to ignore what I call the circus that goes around any show, which is, the
noise,
and the chat rooms and Twitter and this and I feel like as creative people, we're so lucky to do what we do. And I so love it. I just try to really focus on what's on stage and the relationship that the show has every night with its audience. I mean, that you learn more from putting a show in front of an audience than anybody reading it. So that's what I try to really sort of focus on.
And is it hard sometimes to get the vision to gel between, what you envision, what the composer is envisioning, and what the director is envisioning? Because I remember when we started Men, it started out really farcical, and it was really big and over the top, and it got whittled down into, and then by the end, it wasn't so farcical. It had a totally different feel.
Honestly, that was a show Marilee and I did, which I still love, called The Thing About Men. We changed the title. Thanks. And that was the one instance I actually had where a director who was, a talented guy and had a different vision of the show than we did. And it seemed seductive at first. And there was one experience where I was really in the middle of rehearsals. I was like, we have a different vision. We're not doing the same show. And I still love how it came out. And, that great, seriously, ridiculously talented cast. And it ran for a few months, but that was a tough one. That was one of my, that was one of the experiences where the director and I sort of were not, hopefully, I believe in never exposing any problems to the cast, right? I think the cast needs to have one voice and to really do their show every night. But that was a tougher one. Yeah. Because he put it in a darker way than I think was written and that the material can withhold. Which made for some interesting moments and some moments that were maybe pushing and pulling against the intent.
So, Joe, is it hard for you to let go of those kind of experiences? Because for me, I would think if I were a writer, I would have a really hard time not having my original vision put in place. And it would sort of be this white whale for me that I was chasing down to do again and again.
I feel like if I have any keys to any success that I've had is that I keep trying to work on new things and I'm always trying to work on the next project prior to when I'm in the midst of one, which is like an old.
Wow.
So you just jump right into something new.
Jump right in, usually something I've been working on, but just like, okay, this one show is not all you, no matter how well it goes or not. It's like, try to be a writer that has a career that's beyond just this one thing that you want to say. So I really
smart
do.
And
so my
healthy.
rituals come afterwards. Yeah.
That feels healthy to me. When we asked James Lapine what his favorite show was, he answered, I hope it's my next one. So of the similar sort of mind frame, just constantly moving forward, proud of what you put out, but let's keep moving on. Yeah.
Yeah. And can I tell you how I learned that actually? So my first show that went to Broadway was called All Shook Up. And it was about, it was Elvis Presley Jukebox. And we'd been a couple of years before, we had a couple of readings, and everyone loved, like all the people who make theater happen, the theater owners, the investors, producers, they all came to these readings. They were like, it's the next big hit. It's the next Mamma Mia. It was like all of this excitement. And I was first show on Broadway. Oh my God, this is my dream, blah, blah. I have this Elvis, the Elvis people, everyone loved it. We developed it for a couple years. And then when it sort of opened and sort of like did okay, it ran for 4 or 5 months and it toured, but it certainly wasn't a hit, a big hit, whatever that means. And it was really very devastating in a way. And, so I sort of remember I went on vacation for a week to lick my wounds and sort of come back. And I said, okay, how am I going to deal with this? Because what I had done was prior to that, for 2 years, I worked on nothing but that show because I wanted it to be as good as it could be. I just was focus. So when that show opened, I realized, oh my God, I have nothing next. I have nothing really. I had a couple things that I've been developing, but there was nothing that was ready to go. And then I sort of had decided, there's one of two things I could do right now. I could retreat and maybe go to LA and write some sitcoms, which I didn't really want to do. Or I could do what no one expects of me, which is double down and really write for theater as much as I can and really try to do good work and focus on the writing and see what happens. And that's what I did. 4 years later, Memphis opens on Broadway, which was a show I had been working on a bit, but then I really sort of dove into that one. Yeah, it really was like a great lesson, like the old success and failure are illusions, keep on the journey.
Have there been big lessons that came from the one that you just put up that you now bring to the next one that you're in the middle of as you go?
I try to, yeah. I always, I think like life, you always learn the same lessons over and over again. Which
Agreed.
One is like, be creative, be collaborative, be a good person and work with talented people and be open to them. So they want to work with you again and you want to work with them. Forget about yesterday because it doesn't matter. Do everything you can focus on today and look towards tomorrow, which is, really exciting. So is it hard? I think it's part of the process. I've learned to, look, if you don't like collaboration, do not go into theater, and especially don't go into musical theater, because then you're going to have a life full of frustration. And I've worked with great friends who are ridiculously talented where we've had disagreements over the direction something should go. I'm very lucky. I work with, I try to work with people who I think are super talented and super nice and decent people. And I've generally, been fortunate to have that. We try to talk things through. And I also work with people. I always like to say I like to work with people smarter than me because I like to learn things. Like say, oh, that's an interesting thing, or oh, I never thought of it that way, and I respect you, so let's try it that way. And then hopefully, if it doesn't work, they'll go back to my way. And if it does work, I'm the first to say, great, let's do it.
I know you're working with Floaty Suarez right now, right? On What's New Pussycat. And he can talk a lot about changing a vision and changing, of course, in the midst of rehearsals or out of town. We did a lot of changing. But his heart and his engagement and investment and belief in projects is something I will never forget. He showed up every single day. He fell madly in love with the cast, and that sort of parental support that I feel he gives as a producer really buoys, a show. So how's it going over there in London? It looked like you guys got crazy great reviews. Yeah.
And you never know, as we all know, you never know with the reviews. Yeah. And Floaty is the Cher show, which I loved, and you were obviously fantastic in.
Oh, thank you.
And he was such a big supporter of that. He still talks it. And, he really is like, as you said, he's like producer as parent, because there's a warmth there. He keeps in contact with the cast of What's New Pussycat, which is, as we record this, playing in Birmingham, London, which is where both Floaty and I are the two Americans, and we're both back in New York. He keeps in contact with them all every day. He's so supportive. And he was the guy who really kept us through the pandemic and in line. And he gives notes, but they're always smart and they're always respectful.
Because that was my next question. How do you feel as an author having a producer there behind the table almost every day? Because that is rare. That doesn't happen.
It is rare. I try to make it I like it if it's a good producer, and Floaty's a great producer. I like it, and I try to have a conversation with them. So, for instance, oftentimes, and there's of course more than one producer, so oftentimes I'll get, here's 5 thoughts I have on the show from a producer. What I always do, some people ignore those or just talk to them. I always sit down and I write out, and I spend a little time writing out my response. And someone's like, this is a good point, I'm working on it. And sometimes it's, oh, you know what? But if we do that, if we change this moment, then this moment won't work.
Right.
So we should talk about this.
Thank you. However,
yes. One of my things I always say is never break something in a show that's working to fix something that isn't, because then you have 2 broken things. So never move something around because, oh, this is great in the second act. Let's put it in the first where we have this slow spot. I'm like, no. Let's fix the slow spot, but let's leave what's working there. So, and I think when you can really talk, as I say, I sort of really go into the weeds with producers and say, if you want to change this, this is how it's going to affect. And then they can hear that. Producers raise a lot of money. They push us through. They make shows happen. They keep them going. They get us over the hurdles. So, I want to have good relationships with my producers. And, I've been fortunately to work with some really great ones over the years. So it's just engaging them. And, What's New Pussycat is a big old romp through the 60s and Tom Jones shows. And it's really fun. And Floaty was the one who pushed it through. And the show looks great and sounds great. And the cast is just wonderful. But it was interesting because I'm the American author of a very British musical. Sometimes the director will say, well, let's try this. And I'm like, is that funny? He goes, it will be to a British audience.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, they're laughing. I don't understand it, but that's funny. So
why is blood pudding so funny? What is everybody laughing at?
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds disgusting.
I'm like, okay. So, yeah. And, there's always surprises. Yeah. But like a Floaty is just a great, we all should be blessed with producers like that. But Floaty's also, I think, as you were alluding to, Stephanie, very detail oriented. The costumes, which are just gorgeous in What's New Pussycat, they're from the swinging 60s. They're very mod. They're super fun and colorful. You would have a note session and be like, the sleeves on that coat, are sort of distracting. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? And then the next time I'd see the show, I'd be like, oh yeah, those sleeves are
interesting.
Or a one-act play. What are they doing? Yeah. So, so he really is, precise, but super supportive and all that, which you ultimately want.
So tell me a little about Diana. Tell me how it ended up. I'm assuming it got filmed and the deal was made before the pandemic hit, and then that's why they didn't. So what was that a risky choice to have it released on Netflix before it, you bring it live?
Well, it was so my show Diana, about Princess Diana. We had started previewing on Broadway after debuting at La Jolla Playhouse a year earlier. A week and a half before Broadway was shut down by the pandemic. So anyone who's working in the pandemic times, it was an odd time to be on Broadway because the show was going really well. We were in previews. We had a month of previews. We had just started. So we were still working and honing and changing and tightening and seeing what a New York audience reacts to. And suddenly, but as I say, we're rehearsing. And maybe a week before we actually went into the theater, Chris Ashley in rehearsal, our director, goes to me, we're not going to open this season. I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, this virus that's coming, it's going to shut Broadway down. I'm like, crazy. What are you talking about? But suddenly, 2 weeks later, we all knew oh, something's up here, clearly. And as anyone working in shows will tell you, everyone's advance sale suddenly died. And there were still audiences coming, but you suddenly saw pockets of seats where, holes, not in the back of the theater where it was unsold, but in the middle of the theater, meaning people had bought tickets and didn't show up, which, you don't see that. And you can tell audiences were great. They were responding, but you can tell they were getting a little nervous by the end. And then, so we shut down. we were literally having a rehearsal. It was like our 7th or 8th preview. And like around 2:00, our producer, another great producer, Beth Williams, walks in and says, okay, stop rehearsal. Everyone gather in front of the stage. And we all sort of knew it was coming. And she said, I just came from a meeting of the Broadway League with all the producers, and Broadway is shutting down for 3 weeks. And while we're having this talk in the theater, the stagehands are literally wrapping up the costumes and the sets, like they were shutting down. It was surreal. It was like, okay. I think 2 or 3 months in, when we realized it was going to be an extended time, and no one knew how long, and many of our cast members got sick. No one, knock wood, got seriously sick, but it was, like if Broadway was still running in another week, half the shows would have shut down anyway, because people were getting sick. And my collaborator, David Bryan, got really sick. He didn't have to go to the hospital, but I talked to him a couple of times, and he looked like, then he did a TV interview about it, and he looked just like gaunt and death warmed over. I was like, holy shit, I was really worried for a couple of days, and he rallied. But so it was, it was a really, as we all know, a freaky time. And then like 2 or 3 months in, our producers said, we have these sets, we have these costumes, we have the show we love. What can we do? What can we do? Because we don't know when we're coming back. And one of our producers is Frank Marshall, who's a big Hollywood producer. And he calls up a couple of the streamers and says, hey, would you be interested in coming to the theater and filming the show? And Netflix just jumped on it. So we had no idea. And basically, this was before any word of the vaccines. It was right away. That September, I think we shut down in March. So for September, we all had to isolate in a hotel, tested 3 times a week. You couldn't see family or loved ones. The creatives were on different floors than the actors. And when your food was delivered to a box in front of your door, it was wild. It was a little, it was disconcerting, but everyone was working, we were actually paying people. Which was great. And then we went in the theater, and Netflix, the first day, there were 9 cameras. They ripped out the orchestra because we couldn't have an audience. And so it was this wild thing, and they ran through the show twice and filmed it. And then they spent 3 or 4 days doing pickup shots with all these angles and stuff. I think we all felt very lucky. We were very happy. Chris Ashley directed and edited the film. I think he did a great job on it. Netflix really was excited about it, and they held it for a year because they said, we want to do this when Broadway reopens. And this is the big sweeps time for them. So it's not quite a business model, I know. It exposes people to Diana and to Broadway. Amazed, how many millions of people have seen it already, and how many people who would never see a Broadway show have seen it. So it was just, it's one of those things where just all credit to our producers. They just want to do something different, want to do something creative. And it was at a very dark time in, all of our lives, working on the show.
I wonder if it'll start happening more and more.
I hope so. I think it's a great thing.
And they did it with Come From Away too, which was it was great too. Beautiful. I want to know how you did some of those quick costume changes, because some of them were pretty hard to figure out, Joe. Come on.
They are actually on stage. That's all. Yes, that's all.
So that wasn't edited in the movie making.
No, that's all. It actually
very impressive.
Really, because Diana was, very much knew how to get media attention by what she was wearing. We felt that the clothes were an important part of her story and a fun part of her story.
How about Chris Ashley? Both of his shows being on Netflix. He's now a major director on the streaming sensation Netflix.
He's super talented, and and he's a collaborator I've worked with many times before. I have other things coming up. So it's great for everyone to creatively to spread their wings as much as they can in theater, right? To do, television and movies and stream in this new world of streamers where what's TV and what's a movie is very blurred.
And if you could have a second show that represents kind of your work, which other piece of yours would you like to have
on Netflix? Gosh. Yeah. I would love to have had a recording of The Thing About Men with Mary Lee and everyone else. I love that show. And I think that's a show that has an edge to it that would really play well in these times.
Such fun. Plus the cast just adored each other. So all we did was laugh.
And what about David Bryan? How did you two connect with each other? Is it a Jersey connection, or were you a part of Bon Jovi and we just didn't know it? How did that all happen?
It was, and this was 25 years ago now, 1995. I'd written a draft I was commissioned to write Memphis, and I written a draft of it. And I wrote what I call dummy lyrics in it. I just wrote quick lyrics, first draft. I said, this is about the birth of rock and roll. I would love a rocker to write this. And I knew exactly 0 rockers. So I gave it to my agent and he said, I know a couple of rock and roll managers. I'll give it to them. I'm like, okay, fine. Sounds good. Sent it out. I sort of forgot about it probably for a month or 2. And then one day I literally get a call saying, hi, Joe, this is David Bryan. I'm the keyboardist for Bon Jovi. And I just read your script for Memphis and I hear every song in my head. And I want to know how I can write the score. I was like, okay. Rock stars usually don't call me. So I was like, okay, fine. And then I said, well, we chatted. He seemed like a good guy. And I said, look, pick a song. There's some dummy lyrics in, do whatever you want and send it to me. And then we'll talk. And he goes, great. Like very, just like no fuss, no uncertainty, no negotiation. Just, yeah, great. I'll write a song for you. Hung up. And I thought, a couple of weeks later, I'll get something. And the next day there was a FedEx with a CD. This was in the days before MP3.
The next day.
The next day. He literally said, I heard all these songs in my head. He picked, it was from him, and he picked a song called Music of My Soul, which is the second song in the show, which is essentially the I Want song, which details what the character really feels about music and how it's going to take us through the show. And I put it on my CD player and I listened to it once and I said, I hope he's not crazy because he's the guy. And then he just heard it. Yeah, that was literally that easy. And then we met and he's a good guy, because you think, ooh, a rock guy, it's going to be weird to work with. But he's just like a real down to earth Jersey guy who happens to be in a huge band. And, he's one of those composers who just hears melody and music all the time.
It's so funny. I love when you have those moments in life where you just kind of know and it just sort of falls right in front of you and you just go, yep, that's it. And
I was like, that's it.
Yeah, I love those moments.
Yeah. And that song was in the show forever. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And now it's time for the 5 questions.
Joe, do you have a good luck charm or a ritual that you use either before writing or before the opening of a new show?
Oh, that's a good question. Do I have a good luck charm? I don't know if I do.
You don't dance in the rain naked or anything?
Well, I do that anyways. That's where I'm going right after the podcast. No, actually my ritual is always after. When I come home from like an opening, the first thing I do is I walk my dog.
Oh.
Like I always, why? Because what openings are like. You're the belle of the ball and they're stressful and and the producers are nervous about review, so it's all that stuff going on. But I've always had dogs for the last 20 years. And right now we have 2 Havanese. And
you used to have 2 pugs. Yeah, I remember your 2 pugs. Yep.
I used to bring Rocco to the rehearsal. Yeah. He was a rehearsal dog.
And I used to bring Natick. Remember? I used to bring
right. That's right. Oh my God. That's right.
Yeah.
I love dogs in rehearsals. I think they're so relaxing for everyone.
I do too.
As long as you're not allergic, it is a perfect thing to have in a rehearsal.
Really,
it's like the great equalizer. Yep. Everybody comes together to love on something. Yeah, it's really good.
Great. Yeah. It's great. Yeah. But no, so basically after every opening I make sure I come home. It gives me an excuse to sort of get home at a relatively decent hour and then walk the dog. And that just like brings this is what I love. This is what I'm about. It's about this. And then the very next morning, I do try to work on another project.
If you could have any talent or ability, what would it be?
I would love to be able to fly. I would love to just be able to go like, I'm going to London for the day and just go across the water. That's the dream. And the second dream, which I am actually probably lucky I don't have, but I wish, just because I've worked with, folks like yourself, Mary Lee, and, seen Stephanie, and I wish I could sing, which I can't really sing a note. And it's probably good I can't, because I'd probably pursue it and I'd probably be awful. But I really have written so many musicals. I have such great respect for Broadway singers and what you all can do 8 times a week and the excitement you can bring and what that must feel like. Like I would love to feel, to experience how that feels.
What's funny is you gave both the answers that Lynn and Stephen gave, Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty. Stephen Flaherty wanted to fly and Lynn Ahrens wanted to sing.
You're exactly right.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Okay. If you were a pizza, are you a thin, thick crust or deep dish? And what are your toppings, Joe?
Oh, yeah. I always think about this question.
You do?
I love
Deep
it.
thoughts.
I love it. Oh God. I probably am thick. feel like I'm thick crust because I'm a thick guy. And my toppings, I'm like, I like to think I'm pepperoni, which would be like well-liked and spicy.
Yeah.
Maybe more anchovy, which is like a, not everyone likes, but those
acquired taste.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pepperoni and anchovy.
All right, Joe.
Yeah.
You're kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
You have one phone call to your boyfriend.
Yeah.
But you have to tell him you're in trouble without telling him you're in trouble. What do you say?
How does he know you've been kidnapped?
How does he know that you've been kidnapped and you need help?
Hey, Derek, let's go to a sporting event tonight.
That's mine.
I'd be like, what?
Yeah, that's what I say.
Call 911.
Mine would be, I'm so bummed I won't be able to watch that football game with you.
Yes.
Yeah,
that would be
that's mine.
Yeah.
Very clear. Okay, here's another crazy question, but it gets you thinking. If you were a nail polish color, what color would it be? And what would the cheeky little name of that nail polish color?
Oh, I got to say red because I love red. I think red is a very creative color. And my office, I painted red, which is a bold choice, as my friends say, but I feel like it's just very creative. So I would see I'm red. I'm definitely red now. I'm definitely red nail polish color. And I would call it Rocco Red, named after my dog, my beloved
dog.
15 years old, who's no longer with us, and Mary Lee knew. I would be Rocco Red, and he was oddly he was the type of dog that when I was writing would sleep at my feet for hours. So I feel like very inspired by his just breathing, like that's the dog sleeping. Like, is there a better sound? So yeah.
Gosh. Listen, this was so great. I really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us. It's so good to see you and to catch up with you.
I so enjoyed it, and it was so good to see you both too. I'm glad you're both doing well. All right, much love.
Thank you, Joe. Bye.
Bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Coming up next, what struck a chord with us right after this break? Stages podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Our theme song says, love where you are now, but sometimes we all need a little help. I've learned from therapy and in my yoga practice that growth comes from challenges. A good therapist can help you reframe the way you look at a challenge and your life. And BetterHelp can provide you with a therapist that gives you some tools to navigate. They offer customized online therapy, either on video or phone chat sessions. It's more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can reach a therapist in under 48 hours. And right now, Stages cast members get 10% off their first month with BetterHelp, so don't wait. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support Stages Podcast. So log on to BetterHelp, that's HELP.com/stages, and love where you are now.
Mary Lee, you know Joe like intimately in the sense that you guys have been in a rehearsal room together. You guys would have your dogs at rehearsals together. I found him to be so wonderful, and now I want to work on something with him. But tell me what it's like to be in a room with him, actually.
Yeah, he immediately makes you feel very comfortable. He really appreciates the actors, and I found him to be just a joy. He's wonderful. But, I want to tell you a story about Joe. I was writing something, and I wrote an opening scene, an opening number.
Okay.
And I wanted his feedback. So I hadn't spoken to him in ages, and I just sent him an email. And I said, could I trouble you to just read through something and give me some feedback? And he read it right away and said, let's make a phone call. He called me up and he sat on the phone with me for probably 2.5 hours, dissecting the scene, giving me all this advice, saying, this is where this should go. This is what you should do over here. This is how you should move. This is too broad. You have to think about it this way. This is why visual worked when they did it, but this is why yours won't work if you do it. And he gave me this little mini masterclass just because he's a nice guy.
Wow.
That's just what he's like. Just a really, really
generous human being.
Extremely generous. Extremely. Yeah. I wish I had asked him if someone had been that generous with him and that's where he kind of learned it, or if it's just innate. It's truly a nice human being. Very grounded.
Very grounded. That's exactly right. Because sometimes you think, ooh, these writers of musicals and plays, they're heady. They take their work so seriously. They're not flexible in the sense that they don't want to change their work. But he even spoke, look, if you're jumping into the pool of musical theater, you have to be collaborative. You have to be willing to change. I also, one sentence that he said, and in pure Stephanie fashion, I'm going to paraphrase and get it wrong, but he kept saying, if something is going really right, and then later in the piece, something's wrong, and you want to fix what something's wrong, don't take what's going right and
move it.
Yeah. You're going to have
don't break one thing that's working to fix something else that's not working. Yeah. That's what he was saying.
And I was like, even beyond work, like that is so me in my life. I'll look at something and be like, ooh, this is really, really great. Now, how can I move the really, really great in order to fix the stuff that's not going so well? And that has never been the answer. And I don't know why I always double down on stuff like that. When am I going to learn that, just work on the stuff that's not so great without disturbing what's going really well? So
the other thing I just love that he said was how success and failure are illusions. Like there really is no success. There really is no failure. What is that? I think he said, right? It wasn't a big success, whatever that means, right? That's what he said. And I think it's so success and failure are taken from our own perspective. It's just our own point of view. And it's colored with our own experiences, with what we've been taught success and failure mean. I remember for me, I would never let myself say I was an actor until I could support myself on actor money. Because to me, once I got paid, then I was really an actor. And so that was sort of my definition of what it meant to be successful. Am I supporting myself as an actor? Well, then I'm actually one. And really, that's such a terrible way to think about it because it limits you in so many ways. Money doesn't define your worth. And it's part of why he's so nice and part of why he's so grounded is he has this way of coming home. He walks his dog, his feet are on the ground. He remembers what's really important. He connects back to that small part of his world that feels like a real true success for him.
Right.
So other people's judgments of his work don't matter as much. And I just love that about him. I thought that was really profound.
It all comes down to ego, right? Success and failure is really defined by ego. And once you take that out of it, then it just becomes an experience or a lesson, something that is, for me, seems much more part of a healthier mindset. Like success seems so finite. Failure seems so finite, and nothing in this world and nothing in our art form is ever really finite. It's constantly ebbing and flowing and growing and breathing. And so, once you remove the ego of it all, which is not an easy task for anyone, even if, you're on the stage, behind the stage, walking through life. Have you been able to see Diana on Netflix?
I did see it. Yeah. Yeah. It was fun.
Yeah.
It's fun. I kind of wish I could have seen it live because I heard that they had made some changes when they came back up and put it back on Broadway, but I didn't get to see it.
Well, again, because the art form is never finite. It's constantly changing. I saw it too on Netflix and I really enjoyed it. There were some heartfelt moments, but there was, I hope he doesn't take any offense to this, but there was some camp to it too. Now, I personally think that was part of their plan. I don't think it was in error that there was some camp to it, but I so enjoyed those moments. And I'm finding that in our world of musical theater, especially on social media, like Casey Mink and Robbie Roselle, they all have quite a large following and they felt the same way. There's now like this cult energy that has circled around the musical. And the great part is, right, if you had to see it on Broadway, you're paying anywhere from $70 to $120 every time you have to see it. But everybody's getting their fix by going back to Netflix and watching it again or watching just a particular scene or a particular song. And I will be very interested to see if in the next several years, this is now perhaps not the norm, but it will become much more typical to see some musicals, streaming online. How it affects ticket sales, I don't necessarily have the brain of a a theater owner or a producer, but I certainly think when people want to go to that art form and see a stage production of something, and perhaps they can't afford it or they don't have the time, or just to pop in and get their fill, you know what I mean? Get their fill of the laughter and the music and
it might expose people to theater that otherwise have never seen theater and inspire them to go and see a show, you know?
For sure. I mean, I just want to make sure that it always is represented in the way that it's intentioned. If it looks different on the screen, then I don't know if it's really working to the benefit of the art form, you know, but when you're thinking that large scale, how can you possibly control everything?
Yeah. I actually have another little story to tell you, just like a super kindness that someone did for me. So I had to put that 3-legged dog down right before Christmas. Bo passed away because he was just riddled with cancer. It was devastating. And I was totally heartbroken. And in the process, he didn't mean to, but he turned his head and his tooth hit my face. And so I had a puncture wound and a big, huge bruise on my face. So the next morning I wake up and I'm a wreck. I have a big bloody thing. My hat's pulled way down over my eyes because I would burst into tears randomly. And I'm in the nail salon and I'm trying not to talk to anyone, trying not to look at anyone. And the woman knows me because I go in there every couple of weeks. She was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "I am. I don't want to go into details because I don't want to cry. But I had to put my dog down yesterday. It was very traumatic. I'm very upset. I really can't talk about it." I like pull my hat back down. So I'm going to leave. And I'm paying the bill. And the girl behind the desk says, "Oh, this woman left this for you." And I was like, "What woman?" And she said, "She was just a woman that was just in here. I don't think you know her." She left me a note and said, "I know how you feel. I love dogs too. Your next nail appointment's on me," and gave me a gift card. I mean, is that like, so then of course I stood there bawling my eyes. I'm like, "I have to go."
You cried even more, didn't you?
I have to leave now. Like, where do I go? I cried the whole way home. But I don't know who you are, lady. And I don't know if you listen to podcasts, but I hope someday this finds you. The little nail salon in Georgetown, and you left me a present, and it meant so much to me. Isn't that so kind?
Yes. Again, just being aware, noticing somebody else going through something, and just a teeny little thing. It didn't even have to be a monetary thing. It's just she took the time to recognize someone else and where they were, and you were not doing well. And she wanted to lift
it was a
you up.
wreck.
Oh, God.
She was very sweet.
That is very, very sweet. All right. Well, I am going to go out and try to do something nice for someone today. I don't quite know what that is, but hopefully I'll pay attention enough and it will reveal itself to me.
Good. I love it. Let me know what happens.
I will. I'll tell you.
Have a good day. Love you.
I love you.
Bye.
So if this episode resonated with you, please follow, subscribe, and share.
You can always find us at stagespodcast.net. A big thank you goes out to our assistant and doer of all things technical, Saren Cho. Thank you to Noah Kaiserman and Garrett Healy for our beautiful original music, Melanie Von Trapp for our Stages Podcast logo, Brock Grenfeld, our sound engineer, and Allison Arns, our PR and social media expert.
And thank you, our cast members, for joining us today. We hope you come back next week.